Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. I'm Elizabeth Townsend Guard. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School, and I just want to quilt. So today we talk to Eric the Quilter. She's amazing. So he does quilting. He also does knitting and works with knitwear. I guess he doesn't do knitting per se. He does knitwear for his job and incorporates it into his artwork. He does art quilts. He does protest quilts. He dyes things. He taught me he paints fabric. And he gave me a couple lessons on what we need to do for a couple projects. So I was super psyched about that. Anyway, Eric the Quilter. Hold on just a second. Do you have just a second? Things are a little chaotic. I got to find the screen. Thank you so much for being here. Where is the here? Oh, cool. Awesome. How are you? My thought was that we would go maybe half hour, 45 minutes. Does that work for you?
Perfect.
Cool. And you're cool with this being recorded and being a podcast out in the world?
Absolutely.
Awesome. We like that. Cool. Well, what we do is I thought we'd chat about just your life as a quilter, your quilting life, and some other stuff. Any particular things that you want to put on my list so that we get to it during the half hour?
No, nothing in particular I can think of, I guess.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So these are being, so let me tell you, I don't know if you know about my project. I'm a law professor, and I'm doing interviews. We've done about 100 of them. We're trying to get to about 200 interviews of different people in the quilt industry to understand sort of what it means to be a quilter, or what this industry is, and then for me, the underlying intellectual property issues that are here. So we talk a little bit about intellectual property at the end, but that's not really the goal of the set of the first 200 interviews. So I'm just trying to understand you and who you are. They'll also be donated to the Quilt Alliance. So our first question is, I know who you are, but tell me who you are and where you're calling from.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? You kind of cut out a little bit.
Sure. Tell me who you are and where you're located.
Okay. Oh. Let's see. My name is Eric the Quilter. I'm from Northwest Indiana. Learned how to quilt in Minnesota. Moved back down here.
Where's
been quilting
here? Here is
in Highland, Indiana.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I've been quilting for about 6 years now. I've done about 250 quilts.
Love it. That's so great.
I have a little bit of OCD, so it really actually helps with my quilting.
No, I totally get it. What's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
So my mother was a sewer. When I was a little kid, she passed away when I was 4, but I do remember her sewing quite a bit.
Interesting. And how did you get into quilting?
So it's actually funny. I was just on the phone with this woman who taught me before I logged in here. So I used to work at a hardware store when I was in college, and I met this woman, and she was older, and she was always complaining that her kids would never come shovel her snow, and in Minnesota it snows a lot. And the one day I was like, oh, well, I'll come shovel your snow for you. No big deal. And she's like, well, I can't pay you. And I was like, no, that's fine. I'll just come and shovel your snow. And I went over to her house, and I remember I walked inside, and I was just like, why doesn't this woman own any furniture? Because she had a long arm quilting machine in her living room. And about like 8 other sewing machines lining the walls. And I thought, oh, this woman's insane. And after a couple years of knowing her, and she always tried to get me to quilt, and I was like, no, that sounds really boring. That sounds actually quite terrible. Then one day, finally, it was like, all right, yeah, let's do this. And then it was 4 days later, I had a king-size quilt top.
That's so funny.
And that's just kind of how it all started.
So funny. So tell me, like, what do you like to quilt? I've seen your website, but for those that aren't on your website right now, do you have a particular style? If you do 250 quilts, have you tried everything, or do you stick with a particular thing?
I do kind of do it all. I do hate hand applique.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's like the bane of my existence. But pretty
Yeah.
much
Why?
anything.
Why do you hate hand applique?
I just find it very time consuming.
Yeah. And
And I
because
just,
you have so many quilts, do you like quilting? What's your strategy? So I like to quilt fast. I like to make quilts. I don't like quilts that take a long time. Do you have both kinds of projects, or do you gravitate to ones that are more efficient with your time? Sort of, how do you feel about that?
so I do have a couple art quilts I've done over the years. There's probably about 10 or 15 of them. But for the most part, I'm really into strip piecing.
Yeah.
Strip piecing is great. It's really fast. I have an industrial straight stitch machine.
Cool.
Um,
What?
that I really run through.
Cool. That's really cool. And so, why strip piecing? Why do you like that so much?
So I went to school for mathematics.
You did.
And when I designed quilts, because I designed all of my own, it's really great to work with squares and rectangles and have square triangles, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
geometry is really easy to work with.
Totally. All right. So you work in knitwear, is that right? And you make these
Yes, I'm a
really
production
cool.
manager at a branding company, and I do all the custom knitwear.
So tell us a little bit about that, because you use that sometimes you do really interesting things on your website with remnants of knits and making knits and all that, right?
Yes, so I work at a branding company, and we have industrial knitting machines, and we do hats and scarves mostly. And I've taken some of the like remnants or factory seconds, and I've put them in quilts. They're kind of hard to work with, but
Yeah. Do you have
they
to
do
do
turn
any,
out.
do you have to do anything special to it if it's a knit to work in quilt, or you just sort of deal with the kind of squishiness of it?
So to stabilize it, I actually paint it with a solution that's 1/3 Elmer's glue and 2/3 water, and let it dry overnight, because then that washes right out. No problem, and it really stiffens it up and makes it not stretch while you're sewing it.
That's really cool. And then, but you get the kind of softness once you wash it. Is that why you
Oh,
use it?
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Could people use that on other knits if they were wanting, like, is it what? That's a really great. I love that.
I use it on like silk fabric, silk polyester fabric I used in quilts to stiffen it up so it'd be easier to cut and sew.
Yeah,
I use it
love
on
it.
quite a few things.
That's really cool. That's awesome. All right, so tell me more about the knitwear stuff. So what do you do? So tell me about the custom stuff, because that's really interesting.
What do you mean custom stuff?
Don't you do the custom? Did you say that you do custom knitwear? Is that what you do at work?
Yes. Well, mostly we work for breweries and a couple companies, and we design their knitwear. So like their hats and scarves that they sell at the breweries, because that's a really big part of the brewery industry is brewery merchandising. Yeah, so they usually send in art, or sometimes I'll just straight up design something from their logo, and I do all the digitizing.
That's really cool. That's really
Yeah.
cool. So you've got like a full creative life. You've got your quilting and your job. That's just really interesting. Now, do you see quilting as a job, or do you see it as a hobby, or both?
For me, it's kind of both, because I do pay tax on it.
Yeah.
But it depends on the day, actually, because some days it's like, oh, I'm bored, let me start sewing this. And then some days it's like, oh, I have to go sew this now.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather be watching some horrible show on Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. When do you think, so I've been talking to a lot of people, and what makes you a professional? Because you've got stuff at museum and like other things. Like
Yes.
your stuff is like, so what's the difference between a hobbyist versus a professional quilter? And is there a difference, do you think?
I really don't think there is a difference, to be
so
honest with
either.
you.
Yeah, tell me.
Because it's just such a fine line. It's, I have stuff at they just finished a show at the Northern Illinois University Museum, at the Pick Museum there. But I don't know. I just really don't think it's, do you think you're a professional quilter? Like, that's pretty much.
Yeah, it seems like when I talk to quilters that say they're professional, I think it seems like they feel like they're making money, and it's how they earn their living. That it's not about the skill or the quilts they're producing. It's sort of the economic or the revenue part of it. Does that seem to make sense? Does that Do you feel that? I mean, I don't know if you feel that way, but I think that's how they divide themselves. That being a professional means you're making your, and I don't know if that's an interesting divide, but I'm not sure. It's not on skill.
I don't know how that would work, because I mean, if you know, just have museum pieces and
Right.
they're on loan, you didn't make any money, but
Yeah, exactly. No, I think I think it's a problematic definition, like everything
really
in our
is.
world, right? Like everything in our world is problematic, right? So it's really
Nothing's
interesting.
easy. Nothing's easy.
Nothing is easy. Nothing is easy. So, well, that's really interesting. So, yeah, I don't know. I think there might be a spectrum of, people who are more famous for quilting, but I don't see. I don't know. I'm not. I can't. We're in the middle of the project, so maybe I'll have a better understanding of that. I'm a social entrepreneurship professor, so I think about that stuff all the time. Do we need the label?
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter? I don't know. Does it okay, so we'll get off this philosophical ridiculousness. So the reason I know you is because I was on a train listening to podcasts last summer, and you were on the BBC.
I was. That is correct.
I know. So tell me about that. Like, what was that experience like, and why were you on the BBC for those who have not listened to the BBC?
So I labeled it Quiltgate, which I thought was a very accurate description, because there were leaks from this conservative Facebook group about them sabotaging the careers and lives of liberal quilters.
That's so terrible.
And this anonymous person sent me a bunch of the screenshots. And I was like, wow, this is pretty...
That's
this
really
is pretty
brutal,
bad.
right?
And so I put them all up online, and that was kind of the beginning.
That's really interesting. So how did your life? So the BBC. So you put them up online, and then somehow the BBC got to you. How did that happen?
Yes. All of a sudden, I got an email one day. It was a couple days after this all started. The BBC contacted me and said, "Hey, we heard about this, and we'd love to put you on a show."
It's really interesting. And then what happened? So you were on the show, and then what happened after the show? Did your life change at all? Did it go away? Like what happened with that part?
I got a couple threatening letters from some quilters on the list of, from the screenshots I posted.
Quilters shouldn't threaten. That's just what that's like a base level. That should be like our, our rules. Like, don't threaten people. That would be like one of the key rules of quilting. But okay.
Yeah, don't be a jerk. I don't know.
Don't be a jerk.
But I think that should be a key rule for humanity. Just don't be.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. That's I am a law professor, and the only thing, my only rule is be kind. Like, you can do everything else wrong on my project, but if you're rude and mean, then I fire you. Anyway, okay. So what happened after? So you got a couple threatening letters. I got
a couple threatening letters. It was funny. One quilter wrote me a cease and desist.
For what?
For
people that understand
online, and it's like, this is not illegal.
Right, because you posted their posts online, and they think they're trying to use copyright to tell you to take it down. That's what
absolutely, and it's like, I'm sorry, Facebook owns the copyright, so if you can get Facebook to call me.
Right. So a couple of things, since this is part of our copyright. So first of all, they can send a cease and desist letter for you, but I would say that fair use, that you were doing it out of comment, criticize, news reporting. And there's a news reporting exception to copyright. And I think that's what you were doing. You were reporting on what was happening. And so that's a good defense. And then if they wanted Facebook to take it down, they had to send a letter to Facebook. There's a thing called notice and takedown. And they go to Facebook, they say, this is not right. Then Facebook looks to see what it is. And if they say, oh, yeah, this is infringing, they'll take it down. But if it's like, oh, no, it's not, like your use was a news reporting use, then they wouldn't. And then let's say they did take it down, then they would notify you, and you could say, oh, no, I was news reporting, put it back up. And then if they put it back up, the original group that was mad has to go to court to get it down. So it's pretty powerful. Because once you get through that system of like, hey, that's mine, take it down. Okay, we took it down. And then the person says, no, I have a good reason to have it up. it's really nearly impossible for that original group to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the right
I wasn't
instincts.
worried at all. And I even told the one person, I was like, I'll take it down if you get an actual lawyer to write me a cease and desist.
Nice.
And of course, I never got one.
No, that's really good. Good job. I mean, you have the right instincts, right? Which is like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I'm reporting on what you're doing, right? And you had the right instinct of go through Facebook, right? Those are both really good instincts. And then the law itself has put in place things that would help you. So bravo. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So painted fabric. Tell me about that.
So I've been playing with fabric. So the woman who taught me to quilt is a professional dyer. She actually grows her own indigo and makes her own indigo vats.
Really? That's completely insane. That's like really going there.
And so she taught me how to quilt. And so she uses a lot of dyed fabrics and stuff. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'd be into dyeing. And I mean, I did some dyeing, but then I really wanted to try painting some fabric. And I got one day, I just ordered a bunch of different fabric paints and just kind of went from there. And I've made some pretty nice pieces. Actually, 2 of them are hanging up right now in my office.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, so I just kind of started one day and just haven't really looked back on any of this.
So let me ask you a question. On the painted fabric, do you quilt first and then, or do you make the fabric and then quilt? Like, which way does it go for you?
Either way, kind of describes my life a lot. It really goes either way. It's all about, sometimes it's layers of fabric and paint and then more fabric and then paint. And sometimes it's just paint on fabric. Just kind of whatever I'm in the mood for that day, if we're being really honest.
Interesting. So I have this project. It's a map. It's one of those, there's a company that makes the map things. I can't remember their name. Anyway, but we have a map of New Orleans, and I've machine quilted it onto gray. And then my kids, so this is a little bit roundabout. So just, we're doing this whole LGBTQ project, and we're doing a whole bunch of stuff with it, readings, and my kids trans, and like blah, blah, blah. So there's lots going on in our house about all of that. So what am I doing? I'm doing for quilting this year, I'm doing all rainbow quilts and trans-colored quilts. Like that's everything in like every quilt I've been making. So, and I'm so fast. So anyway, we've got this map that's all gray, and the idea is to have her and her art, they're both art kids, color wash it with rainbow. Whatever colors they want. But I'm not sure exactly how to do the color wash part of it, because we want the map to show through a little bit. But we don't. We also want to be like, this is a rainbow city. So I'm not sure how to do that exactly. Would you like just dilute? Do you have suggestions for us?
What type of fabric is it?
It's just like a cotton. It's just like a, regular. I hadn't really thought about it while I was sewing. I mean, the other problem is I don't know if it'll stick, I don't know. I think we just need I don't know how it's going to work. I don't really care. I mean, if it doesn't turn out, that's okay too. But I'm not sure what to. I mean, it's almost ready for them to paint, but I'm not exactly sure what to do in terms of. I'm not a painty person, so.
Well, you can always just water down acrylic paint. Use a little bit of textile medium in there to give it, just a really thin body.
Yeah, that sounds great.
You could use something like Dynaflow, one of the color sensitive ones, and do it out in the sun.
Say that again. What was it?
So there's Dynaflow, which is a fabric paint.
Okay.
It's a very thin basic acrylic. It's actually it develops in sun. So you paint it. What you do is you can paint it outside and basically develop it as much as you want.
Wow, that's really cool.
And then once it develops enough, you could take it out of the sun, and that's kind of where it'll.
And do you think we could get that result of that kind of like bleeding into? I think that's what they want, is like different, like bleeding into different colors kind of thing. Do you think you could do that? Mm-hmm. Would you do it like one and then do another layer, or would you do it all at the same time?
I would do it all at the same time.
Interesting.
But I try to be super efficient, and sometimes that doesn't always work out, if we're being honest.
You know what? I think we could be great friends, because I'm all about efficiency too. I have to tell you. I'm like, I have no time for this. This is taking up way too much time. It's very funny. Yes, I'm very like, yeah. So this project, I was determined to quilt at night, every night, which I've almost done every night. But I've made like 35 quilts. It's ridiculous. So,
nice.
Yeah, and I'm still keeping them all, because we may do a book out of it. So I need to keep them. So at one point they'll all go away, but right now they're an embarrassing stack, or maybe not embarrassing, but maybe
impressive.
Triumphant, right? Impressive. A triumphant stack of ridiculousness. Anyway. All right. So I have more to ask you. So the Star Wars scarves. Tell me about those.
So one day one of my friends asked me, they were like, I need a Christmas present for my girlfriend. And I said, okay, well, what do you need? Because I'm the only creative person in my group of friends for some reason. So all of that always just falls on me, like, oh, Eric.
Right.
So I was working with some vector art, and I just kind of designed it one day and ended it out. It took all about 25 minutes.
Wow. And then did you just do it at work? Is that the...
Yeah, so we kind of have this agreement at work. I work all the overtime that they ask me to, and then they just let me use the machines in my free time.
That is really cool. That's a great deal.
It really is. I mean, it works out great. The owners of the place I work at are just so awesome.
That is really cool.
They actually went to the museum when I had that piece at the museum.
Yeah.
The one went with his wife to go see it, and I was like, oh, so
That's
sweet.
really sweet. That's very nice. Now tell me about your Zelda commission. My husband and I don't, tell me about your Zelda commission.
So I designed the Zelda Quilt for one customer one time. And all of a sudden, I put it online. I was like, oh, this is what I'm working on this week, because I'm a huge Zelda fan. I have Zelda tattoos.
And for those, so we're preserving this for history. So tell people, like, in 20 years from now, what is Zelda?
It is a video game by Nintendo. And I don't even know how many versions they have now. Gosh. I think there's like 13 games.
Yeah. It's like a thing. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal, yes. So like I said, I have the tattoos. Because people always think as a quilter, like, it's weird that I have so many tattoos.
Yeah.
I don't know. They just expect me to be like a little old lady trapped in, a 28-year-old's body.
That is so ridiculous, right? I feel like that is such the misnomer. Like, it's so interesting that's way out of date, right? Like, that's not what's
Absolutely.
happening. That's not what's happening. And those leading the field, that's not what's happening. So
not at all.
No.
Yeah. So I made one, and then all of a sudden I put the pattern. I was like, oh, this is what I'm working on. And all of a sudden, I've made about 25 of that quilt.
Wow. That's really cool.
At this point in time.
And then, do you have an Etsy shop? You have an Etsy shop, right?
I do indeed.
And how is that? How is that experience of selling on Etsy?
So I don't really push the Etsy shop that much, just because I don't have the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it seems
because
really
however much I do like making money off of quilting.
You do?
I do like making money off of it because I like money.
Yeah, me too. So
as a Greek person, it's like, it was really
it's important, right? It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me how you make money off of quilting. In what way?
I've made a lot of commission quilts for people.
Interesting.
I don't do it as much anymore. Because my day job is usually just so busy, so now I just kind of focus on the quilts I want to make.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got a crap ton of student loans, and all if I want an expensive hobby,
yeah, right, will
give me some financial return on investment. And so I started doing commission quilts for a while.
And then how did you grow that? How did you grow that? Did just people see? I suspect people saw your work and then they're like, "Hey, I want one too." Is that kind of the way it happened?
Pretty much, yeah. I would just put pictures on Facebook and they would get shared. And that's pretty much all it was just word of mouth. I mean, I would post things on my Facebook page, but then they would just get shared all over the internet.
That's so cool. Now, were you cool with that? Were you okay with people, so again, this is my copyright hat. Are you okay with people sharing the images you post? That's kind of the goal of them, right? Is to have them shared and...
Yeah, I mean, I put them on a Facebook page. I didn't make the page private or anything. It's a public page. So when I posted them, I had every intention that they were just out there for people to see.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Well, what if somebody copied what you did? Would you care about that?
It's happened a couple times. And no, not terribly. I mean, I guess it would be one thing if I was still making a lot of commissions for a living.
Yeah.
But with my day job, I just can't. I actually no longer sell the Zelda quilts just because the demand just got too high for them, and I was like, I just don't have time.
Zelda. So making the Zelda quilts, did you feel like, so I do a ton of fan fiction stuff, so, and fan art and all that. That's part of my law part. So how did you, tell me about your thoughts. Did you feel like you could just do it because you were a fan? I mean, like the tattoo you have is a good example. Do you feel like you have the right as a fan to express yourself using Zelda stuff?
Well, kind of. I mean, I've spent a crap ton of money on all of the games.
That's right. That's right. That is a really good, you know what, actually, I haven't really heard that argument before, but I think that's a really good argument. That, like, you're not, and so this whole thing, it's like one of fair use is all about, like, market replacement, and you're not getting a tattoo instead of buying a game, right? That's stupid. Or you're getting it because you buy the games. So they're getting their money, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when I made the quilts, it was kind of like my, artistic interpretation. Like, it was never just like a copy of their direct logo or anything. It was just,
yeah,
it was just kind of like, oh, this is, how I feel about Zelda.
Yeah. Well, I was recently talked to a attorney for the content for a major studio, and she was pretty much the same way. She's like if it's like someone's making it and they're making it by hand, that's really different. That doesn't really compete with our product per se. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different
there's really
thing.
Nothing out there on the market that this would be a substitute for.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not mass producing it in China. That's something that they worry about. And even selling them on Etsy, there's a line. Like, if you're selling like 5 of them, right? You're making like a Skylander hat. Somebody wants a hat and you make it for them. That's really different than like mass producing something, right? That's a different scale.
And like
of
every
economy.
one of mine was, obviously slightly unique because I can't. I mean, I guess I could make an exact copy of a quilt, but God knows I'm not going to.
It's just so boring, right? Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. Okay, and then tell me about the Anthems quilt project.
Oh, the anthem. So I feel terrible about that because I still haven't finished mine.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make, it wasn't like
the first time I got whooping cough, then
What?
bird flu, then cancer.
Oh my goodness.
So it's been like on my back burner for like a year and a half now.
That's craziness.
And maybe I'll finish it. Hopefully, you know what? Thank you for reminding me about that. 'Cause I will do that.
Awesome. Well, tell me about that project.
So it was put together by a man named Richard Kinnear, who is, he's on the trade show circuit. He does fair trade embroidery, thread and yarns, stuff like that from Africa. And he put together this project where he wanted a quilt in the shape of an upside down triangle, reminiscent of Nazi Germany, homosexual in the camps. About, the song that like you felt you really identified with as a young, homosexual person. And yeah, so I have 2 actually in the works. One's like 2/3 of the way done. One's like started, maybe we could call it that. I don't know. I think there's some fabric cut in a triangle somewhere in my house.
So the shape, the quilt itself will be shaped into a triangle. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. It has to be a 30-inch.
Each side.
Yes, I'm sorry. There's a mathematical term for it. Again, I went to school for mathematics, so I'm like
You're a math guy.
So, yeah.
I know.
Yeah, each side has to be 30 inches. It's an it's a 30-inch equilateral triangle.
Very
Sorry,
good. Thank you. That's a very fancy word. Okay,
you.
so 30 inches. That's really cool. And then, how many people do you think were participating in this project?
I don't know. I hope quite a few. I know he had some heart problems.
Oh.
And so he postponed it by a year.
Really?
And that worked out for me because I had the bird flu. So
that's crazy.
Everything kind of came to a screeching halt for me because I had to take an entire week off work,
Yeah, that's craziness.
And then it was like, oh, I'll finish it. And then I got cancer. And it was like, maybe next week.
That's not fun. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
They cut it all out, so we're good. I mean, it just took a lot of time out of
Yeah, right. Interesting. So what do you think they're going to do with the quilts once they're done?
I know there's a show. I believe it's supposed to be at the Convention Center in Chicago for the quilt show, which I believe is in September. So
very cool. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I'll have to see if they still are. I wonder if did they extend the deadline? The deadline was a while ago, like last year.
Yes, they pushed it. They pushed out a year because Richard had the heart problem, so he had to postpone the show by an entire year.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's really cool. Well, can't wait. I would love to see it. That sounds really interesting. I love it. I can't wait to see. There's no pictures of the quilt yet on this website, so.
Yeah, so mine actually is. I'm using a couple different like really funky techniques. I bought a sublimation printer last year.
What's a sublimation printer?
So you print out. It's this special ink that sublimates, so it goes from a solid to a gas onto polyester fabrics. You could actually print on polyester fabrics.
And what does it do? What does it do once it goes from a solid to a gas? What does that do to the fabric?
It impregnates the actual fibers of the polyester. So you actually are printing on the polyester. It won't fade or anything like that.
That's really
because it's actually dyeing and fusing to the polyester fabric.
Interesting. That's really amazing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I'm got some things halfway worked out with it. It's one of those. I'll kind of wing it as I go, but that's usually how I quilt anyways. It's well, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, let me ask you about that.
But we're going to make it work.
That's cool. Yeah. So do you do a lot of, people call it improv quilting, but do you let the project go where it's supposed to go, or how much planning do you do?
So it's funny, I'm a production manager at work, so I yell at people a lot. And it's usually well, I'm not sure what I'm doing. It's well, just start and just figure it out as you're going. And that's usually kind of how I quilt too. I'll have an idea for something and it's I'm not sure how this is going to work, but you know what? I just need to start it because I can plan it for hours and days and, not actually get anywhere. And it's let's just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll just kind of accommodate, as it goes.
Interesting.
And I haven't had to throw away a quilt yet, so I feel that's a pretty good track record.
That's really interesting. That is a really good. I was looking at that because I'm our school. As a law professor, so our school year ends June 30th. So I'm trying to get all the quilts that were started this year done by then because I feel I have to. And I'm how many did I throw out? And I thought one turned into pot holders because it just wasn't working, which is fine. And then another one was just gross. So I think two of them, one got thrown out and one should be thrown out. So that's not terrible. I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. Bad. But that's not bad considering. So yeah, so I did think there was a moment where it's just you must go in the garbage. You are not salvageable in any way, and you must leave my life.
There was a couple of painted pieces where it's wow, this is just kind of gross looking now. We're just going to hide this.
Yeah, it happens.
We just won't talk about it anymore. So there's a lot of things that don't make it on my blog.
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
There actually are a couple of things that don't make it on there.
Yeah, that's good. That makes me feel better about my world and my life. It's very interesting. Well, very cool. Well, anything else before we end? This has been delightful, and you're so cool. I'm really psyched that you were willing to chat. Anything else that I might not know to ask you?
So actually, I'm working on 2 quilts right now. I hope the museum pieces when I'm done with them. So one of them is actually, I guess it's technically applique. It's literally tiny, small pieces of fabric, all 1 by 2 or by 3 inches, sewn together in a terrible entropic manner, just all stitched down. And so I'm really excited for that one because I really want those raw edges to fray and everything. And
yeah.
So I'm really excited about that one.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And I have one I'm working on that, so everyone thinks as a quilter, a lot of my quilts are really, pleasant and fun to look at, but some of them aren't. They're really aggressive and angry looking.
That's good though, right? That's quilting is, I just interviewed the social justice sewing academy. Yeah. They're awesome, right?
I met her at the NIU show because we both had stuff there.
Oh, she's just great, right? She's so cool. So yesterday, I interviewed her yesterday. So yeah, quilting isn't about pretty sometimes. It shouldn't be. So it should be about lots of things. And I love.
I have one of a little boy lost in the woods on my office wall, and people are always oh gosh, that's so dark. And it's well, yes, thank you.
That's what it's supposed to be.
I think that's where I was going with it. Right.
I love and all the protest quilts that show the after the Trump election, the protest quilts that are around. They're just incredible.
So this one actually could probably be one of those. The one I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
So it's actually denim. It's going to be a denim quilt.
I love denim.
It's going to start in the top left corner as like really well put together pieces of denim. It's just all going to be denim squares. And as you go down, it's going to fray and shred and expose. Really cool. So underneath the denim is going to be these red fabric squares. And then I'm actually going to take the flies and zippers from these jeans. I'm going to applique those into the words, "I want to kill your rapist."
Wow.
On the quilt. One of my friends and I were just having a conversation about her being a woman, and it was just like, I don't know, I just got so worked up about it. I went home and I was like, I'm going to have to sew something. I just designed that in like 10 minutes.
That's really beautiful. I mean, not beautiful, like horror. I mean, really powerful.
Thank you. Really powerful. No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I was just saying this yesterday. There is something about fabric, things made out of fabric that protest. I think about like the AIDS quilt, right? Like we saw that in Chicago. It was in Chicago last summer. Like, and the protest quilts and the Trayvon Martin quilts and like all this stuff that it's more moving than anything else I can imagine. Like for me, at least, like people taking time to make it into fabric is, haunting, beautiful, shocking. Like there's just, I don't know why fabric does that to me. I don't know if it's to other people too, but I just think it's so incredible moving,
The woman who taught me how to quilt would always say, it's very cathartic looking at quilts or making quilts because, people think of it as like a really calm hobby. But I mean, you're watching that needle pierce that fabric thousands of times. You're hammering things down.
Yeah.
When you have a lot of seams beating up in one section.
That's true.
You're beating the heck out of that with a mallet, or at least I do anyways. I don't know about everyone else, but...
Yeah. You hit the seams with a mallet? Is that what you said?
I do, yeah, to flatten them sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, especially for like pinwheel quilts or something.
Yeah?
Oh, heck yeah. I just beat the heck out of that with a mallet.
Okay, I totally want that. That's really funny. That's great. I haven't tried that. Okay, I will totally try to whack my quilts with a mallet. That is so
absolutely.
Awesome.
Same when I do the denim quilts because, the seams just get so bulky. Yeah, you just beat them down. Just beat them in a submission.
That's really interesting. So anything that kind of has bulk, you use a mallet and just hit it. Like, how aggressively do you hit it?
It depends on my mood more so than the fabric. If we're being honest.
I really like that.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
Sometimes I'll put like a piece of like the silicone sheeting for like your heat press or iron down and then hit it. Yeah.
Interesting. I like it.
Yeah, just got a town on it,
That's really interesting. I like that. Well, I'll have to try that. That's very lovely. Well, this has been like this. See, 45 minutes goes fast. Like you think
this has been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you chatting. I really do. So next thing, can you send me a short bio and any pictures that you want? We'll make a web page for you on the JustWannaQuilt website.
Perfect.
And also, if you have any suggestions of people that we should be interviewing in your circle or that or just, and maybe even the person that trained you would be great to chat with her or him. Her, right?
Yeah. Her name's Cecile.
She's also I would love it. So we're looking for more people. I would love people who do art quilts. More people that are in the LGBT community would be awesome. Others on the Anthems project, anybody. So, I mean, I really love more voices, but I really wanted to interview you because I thought of you as like the coolest when I heard you on the BBC on the train. I just thought I've got to interview you. So I feel like I don't have a bucket list, maybe a quilting bucket list, but you were on it.
There you go. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I feel I'm pretty psyched.
When you say short bio, because for the first show I was at, they were like 2 to 3 sentences, and I thought that meant like 2 to 3 sentences.
Yeah, no, I'm talking like maybe a paragraph or 2.
Okay, yeah, because that's what everyone wrote for each quilt was like 1, 2, or 3 paragraphs. I was the only one who actually wrote.
Like you only one followed directions.
Yeah, that was like, oh, gosh darn it,
I love it. I really love it. That's really great. Well, again, I'm so excited to talk with you. And if you have other things that come up and you want to come back on and chat, it's really about creating dialogues, not about like one-off interviews. So if there's stuff that comes up or you want to chat or you have, people that you think I should interview, just reach out to me because I'd be really psyched.
Will do. You've been fabulous.
Oh,
I started listening to your podcast over the weekend.
Yeah.
Actually put it on at work on Friday.
You did.
On the Bluetooth speakers. They fitted my entire department with the Bluetooth speakers.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
So my employees were subject to quilting for 8 hours.
I don't know about that. That's very funny. Oh my goodness. Well, this project's a lot of fun, so I get to talk to people like you, and so how cool is that? Especially as a law professor, because my job is not usually this fun. So, so this is awesome. So. All right, so the next step is you're going to send that stuff to me. I'm going to process this interview. I'm going to send it back to you, and you get to choose if there's anything you want cut out of it, and we will delete it. Do you want any of the personal stuff? Anything? I don't know what was personal. Is there anything that you can think of right now that you want out of it? Just listen to it. You'll see if there's something. Somebody one time. The weirdest one I had is that they mispronounced somebody's name and they forgot to put a Mick. Oh no, they said like McMahon and it was man, so I had to go back and take out the mix out of the interview. I'm like, okay, that's a little much, but I can do terrible. It. Yes. Yeah. So you get to listen to it, and then once it's done, we post it.
Wonderful.
Okay, cool, awesome. Well, have a great day.
You too. Enjoy the rest of this holiday weekend.
Yes, that's right. It's nice. All right, fabulous. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye. So this is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. You've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. We want to hear from you. Join our army, our quilting army. Go to our Facebook page. Suggest people to be interviewed. Suggest yourself to be interviewed. We are excited to hear from you. But most importantly, I hope you get a chance to quilt today.